I'm Jennifer Moore of Marcellino Moore, and I just sat down with my law partner, Danielle Wall, to talk all about parenting coordinators. We're both parenting coordinators, so I think we know what we're talking about. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Okay, Danielle, I'm super excited to talk about this topic, one of our favorite topics.
My favorite.
Your favorite. I know you're so good at it. Parenting coordinators and what they are and who they are and how they come to be and what they do. So tell us, maybe we should start with who they are, because I think that's kind of the first thing. Who can be a parenting coordinator and who makes those rules?
So there's a statute that establishes what a parenting coordinator is. And in North Carolina, there are two types of parenting coordinators. You either come from a therapist background or an attorney background. Either way, you have to have at least 5 years of practice underneath your belt before you are permitted to take the course that then, if you're an attorney, helps you kind of understand the therapist side. And if you're a therapist, it helps you understand the legal side. And once you complete that course and show that you've got the requisite experience, then you are certified by the local court to be a parenting coordinator. And each county, Mecklenburg County is one of the few that actually is able to maintain it. But each county is supposed to maintain a list of their parenting coordinators. And so if you're on the list, then you are a parenting coordinator.
And you're in. And
Yeah.
Mecklenburg is a huge county, and we have a lot of parenting coordinators in Mecklenburg, so we're lucky there. It's not necessarily true of outlying counties, smaller counties like Cabarrus and Union and Gaston, things like that.
Yeah, and I think one of the other benefits of Mecklenburg County being the size that it is that lots of us will go to other counties and support those counties
Right.
and act as parenting coordinators.
Yes, absolutely. And so once you get appointed, I guess let's start with, how do you get appointed?
One of the benefits of having a parenting coordinator is that parenting coordinators are appointed by court order, which means that they have teeth because they operate for the benefit of the court and also under the guidance of the court. And so if somebody wants to use a parenting coordinator, you really want a court order appointing you, because that's how the parenting coordinator can perform their duties. And that court order tells the parenting coordinator exactly what their duties are, because some parenting coordinators are very broad and some are very narrow.
Yeah, and that court order tells you how you can get help. And by you, of course, I mean the parenting coordinator. I'm saying that because we both are parenting coordinators. But it tells the PC, the parenting coordinator, how they can get help from the court if they need it, what the parties are required to do as it relates to the parenting coordinator, like pay the parenting coordinator, follow the parenting coordinator's rules and directives and things of that nature. So that that order is so important. Without it, there would not be the authority that the parenting coordinator needs to do his or her job.
Yes, and I think one of the other parts that is valuable to note is that in some cases, as a parenting coordinator, I can do almost anything. In some cases, a parenting coordinator, I really don't have a lot of authority because I'm only there for a specific task. And so that also that's your instruction manual as a
Yeah.
parenting coordinator.
Absolutely. And maybe before we move on from this, why would a case want a mental health professional as a PC versus an attorney? What do you think are like the strengths brought by each type of professional, and where are those strengths most appropriate?
So I think I would start by saying every parenting coordinator has different strengths.
Yeah,
And so
I
some
agree.
of us, like you and I, are more, we are litigators. And so
Yeah.
we tend to litigate. And so we can come at it with here's our experience that we have being in the courtroom a lot. Here's the experience we have dealing with clients who are in similar situations to the parties in a PC case. And if you've got somebody who's never litigating, who's never in a courtroom, they act as a therapist, then they're going to bring a different skill set that's a little bit unique, because we all have a limited amount of time to learn
Yeah.
how to use those skills. And so as an attorney, when I'm picking a parenting coordinator, I might want somebody with a therapist background if I've got a child who's got really special individualized needs. For example, if I have, somebody who has a learning disability, and that is maybe they also have autism. And so I want to be able to have a parenting coordinator who's got a lot of that mental health knowledge to know how you might advise a parent to do things a little bit differently if a child is going to be different in receiving that information
Yeah.
versus just, well, a court is going to say this. And so it's a different consideration. But I also would want, on the other hand, I would want more of a litigator, more of an attorney type PC if I know I need very clear directions.
Hmm.
I need everything spelled out very clearly. I need a parenting coordinator who might be challenged and is willing to sit
Rise
straight
to
up.
the occasion.
Yeah, and also not be afraid to go to the court and answer to the boss, who is always the judge, and
Yeah.
say, "This is why I did what I did, and I
Yeah.
feel fully confident in what I did." And
Yes.
that's a skill that you and I might have that a parenting coordinator might not feel as strong in
A
doing.
mental health professional. Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think on that note, we oftentimes have parenting coordinator cases with one or both parties who really don't like us, really don't like the decisions we make, and challenge us a lot in that way. And so, yes, sometimes the stronger personality types like you and I can handle that better and not fold under the pressure of a difficult parent.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, if parents were in agreement all the time, you wouldn't need a parenting coordinator.
True.
And so we are there to help solve and bridge that divide between parents. And sometimes we can help the parents do it themselves. But when we can't, if there's a decision and the choice is A or B, and that's all it is, somebody's not going to like us. And
Right.
so, when it is more of that kind of thing, I think that's when you need more of an attorney background, is
Yeah.
if you've got a lot of A versus B, as opposed to just talking it out.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so then once the PC is appointed, let's pretend like it's not narrow, it's a full scope appointment for a PC. What does that look like? What is the process? And I recognize that that process is different for you as a PC than it is for me, than it is for other PCs in town. But generally, based on you being a PC and having cases with other PCs involved, what do you see that process to be, and what is the role of the PC?
So, I a lot of times before I'm even appointed, the attorneys have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this case. Do you have the capacity for it?" Because parenting coordinating takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of mental labor that is different from my normal mental labor. And
Yeah.
so I have a different capacity for PC cases versus other cases. And so I might have learned something about the case. It does happen where I get appointed and I learn about it when I get an order saying that I'm appointed.
Yeah.
And so always my first step, regardless of when the order is issued, is to try to figure out what kind of case it is. And so is it a case where a child is young? Is it a case where the child is older? Is it a case where you've got a resist refuse dynamic? One of the children isn't seeing the other parent, or multiple children aren't seeing the other parent. Is it a single child versus multiple children? Are the issues communication primarily? Are the issues just, mom is, always looking up and dad is always looking down, like then they
Right.
can't see eye to eye. And so once I assess for what kind of case it is, I then also will look at the pleadings and see what my order says that I'm supposed to do, but also then read what the parties have agreed to for custody, if they've agreed, or if there's a court order in those terms, and then get a feeling for the rest of the pleadings. If I open up portal and there's 700 pleadings, then that's a different case from if I open one up and there's a consent order that appoints me and I don't know. And so I get a feeling for that. And then my next step is always to speak to each party individually. So I'll meet with typically a mom, and then I'll meet with dad separately and get a feeling for it. So I'll assess, is there some sort of domestic violence? Is there a reason we can't do joint meetings? Is there a reason that communication is broken down? Who are these people? And assess for what they see the problem. So I usually ask a party, I say, why is it you think I'm here? And what do you hope to get from me? And a lot of times they say, you're here because it's their fault. It's not for me. It's because they can't do whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I suss that out, figure out where I'm going to go with it. And then I usually try to start having joint meetings. And that's typically the goal, because the goal is to work myself out of a job.
Right.
Nobody wants me in there forever.
Yeah. And oftentimes the court order only appoints the PC for a certain period of time. Sometimes it's only a year. And then after that, a party can ask the court to extend it, but then the PC could roll off. And hopefully the goal in that is to have addressed those issues, have helped the parties better co-parent, better make decisions together, and the PC isn't necessary and you have worked yourself out of a job.
Yes. And I think one of the things that's important to note is that requires parties to have buy-in, because
Yeah.
the other thing that we can do if we can't get the parties to agree and they can't figure out how to co-parent is it's more likely that a PC ends up acting as an arbitrator and just making decisions the whole time.
Right.
And in my experience, if all I'm doing is making decisions, then I'm driving the parties further apart, because it becomes one party's winning and one party's losing.
Yeah.
And it continues that dynamic. And so I'd prefer not to do that, even though the statute says that's what we're there to do.
Yeah. And that's a great point. So the authority of the PC is to make decisions over certain things. And where there are holes in custody order and, gray area and the parties can't agree, or over specific like areas that are delineated by our statutes, like travel and I don't know, insert thing here, ear piercings.
School. Toys, medicine.
Yeah.
Like COVID was a big time for parenting
Yes.
coordinators with the vaccine, but a lot of school decisions are made. I'm currently working on probably my 6th or 7th
Yeah. That does
school
happen to
choice
you a lot.
decision. And I called another PC and they said, I've done this 27 something times.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much.
School decision is so difficult for divorced parties to deal with when there is more than one answer, more than one option.
And there's not a compromise. It's not like
Correct.
you can do half at each
Yeah.
school. And so
Yeah.
that makes it hard.
Yeah. So the PC has the authority to make those decisions. But then if a party doesn't like them, you can appeal to your trial judge to overturn that decision. So the PC's decision remains binding as an order of the court, essentially, until and unless the judge overrules.
Which is something that is hard to remember, because even if you have a parenting coordinator and the appointment is for a year, after that parenting coordinator isn't there, that order that the PC made is still
Stays
binding.
in place. Yeah.
And so it can be difficult, but that's also something I remember as a parenting coordinator is I answer to the judge.
Yeah.
And so if I get appealed, or if my decision gets reviewed, I've got to be able to tell the court why I made that decision. And
That's
so
right.
I take my job very seriously as a PC.
Yeah.
It has a lot of weight.
It does. Yes. And so back to that process. So I agree. I usually meet with the parties separately, and then I try to have joint sessions thereafter. Sometimes they're virtual, sometimes they're in person. I say more often than not, they're virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And then I create an agenda, and it's prioritized, in order of importance. And we start and hit on as much as we can, but I try to keep my meetings in an hour length, because it's not easy to talk through these things for parties, and it can be adversarial and emotional and just overall difficult. And so if we're spending an hour together, what of the agenda are we hitting, starting with number one? And maybe it's just number one. Maybe we don't even get through number one, but at least we're working towards these goals that we've all agreed on, or things that we need to address. And of course, it's not linear. Unfortunately, I would love it if it was, but what I put as number one, on June 22nd, is that the date? I don't even know.
No, it's the 26th.
It's the 26th.
27th? I don't know what day it is.
Listen, I got the month right, and I'm going to go with that. Okay, so if I make a decision on June 26th, then if I decide that on June 26th, number one is the most important thing, but then tomorrow something may happen that, it drives number one way down, and suddenly I have some other things that are up at the top and we're addressing. So it's kind of a as needed, like what is most important in that time period conversation.
Yeah. And I think it sounds like we might do those slightly differently, because I will limit people to 3. I give everybody the option. I say, you give me 2. party A give me 2, party B give me 2. I will pick of what of those are like 1 from each of you, and then I'll have my own if I've noticed something in the communications. And
Mm.
so I try to limit it because I want to teach parties also to prioritize. And so sometimes one of the things that can be overwhelming when you have a difficult co-parenting situation is every time I open the door, I get hit with a deluge of information. And so instead of being open, you start closing off and you're unwilling to even open the door to hear anything. And so I think by helping triage and teach parents how to triage, it helps steer them. But I also wonder if maybe your way would help more people feel heard in all of their things. Like, I don't
Mm.
like this restriction and the slowness of it. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's an example of how different parenting coordinators do things a little
Do
bit
it
differently.
differently. That's so
Mhm.
true. Yeah. I don't think one way is better than the other, but I really like your idea of like teaching people to like hone in on what's most important. Um, and that also touched on another piece of parenting coordinator is we typically are attached to communications of the between the parties, at least for a period of time.
Mhm.
And whether that's being copied on emails that they send, not text, because I try not to text with my clients, but if we have our family wizard, for example, and we can be added as the professional who can just pop in and see what the communications are. And that's important because you, one, want to assess what the communication style is from each party, but then also you want to address any communication breakdowns and method of communication breakdown. And a lot of times the conflict between the parties is simply communication errors, for lack of a better term, and being able to see that and address it and put in place some boundaries as to how the communication is going to go between the two of them sometimes helps alleviate a host of co-parenting problems.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right because I sometimes going to school A versus school B is not an issue in communication, but a lot of times the issues are stem from a lack of communication. What
Right.
is it that this child wants? Well, I don't know how to articulate in a way that you know how to receive it. And then I also think that parents have established patterns of communication. And so by having a parenting coordinator help disrupt that pattern, you can start a different track.
Yeah.
Somebody with a difficult co-parent is not necessarily a difficult person generally. It's just that relationship has so much baggage
Right.
and we can help cut through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you, as a PC, like to talk to or meet the children?
It depends. So I know there are some parenting coordinators who do literally do a home visit and they go meet the child in a person's house. I would rather never be in somebody's home unless I have a compelling reason to do it. And I make it on a case by case basis. If I've got a child who doesn't have a therapist and has some mental health issues, I don't want to be another adult meddling in that.
Right.
I'm never as cool as I think I am, children don't see me as a friend. They see me as an adult who's coming in and parents are already in conflict. And so
Right.
I am careful about how a child might think that I'm there to help mom or dad, or that they have to feel like they have to advocate for a parent while they're there. Um, but sometimes there's not a better way for me to get that information. And I also have a lot of parents who tell me that their child doesn't feel heard in the process because they don't want them to go testify in court. And the therapist is their therapist, and their therapist might not testify in court, or even if they do, a child doesn't know. Like it gets fuzzy. And so, a known way to talk to somebody that is from the court in some way is talking to the parenting coordinator. And so it
Right.
can be a relief valve for a child to just dump all their feelings about whatever they are. And the statute specifically says that we can speak to children.
Yeah.
Um, I make it a point that if I'm speaking to a child, I don't, I meet with them in a public place. I'm never going to meet with them in a small private place. I try not to do it at the office because I mean, we're a lovely office, but it's still scary to go
Yeah.
to a law firm.
Yeah.
And I don't take notes because I don't want them to think that I'm just there to report on
Right.
and tell on them. And
Yeah.
so I specifically don't take notes. And then if anybody wants to know what said, you're relying on my
Your
somewhat faulty
recollection.
memory. Yeah.
Hopefully not faulty. Well, yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's definitely case by case basis. But I think all of the kind of boundaries you place on that make a lot of sense. So you're good at this.
Thank you,
Danielle.
Jen.
You're a good PC.
I feel like we work very similarly
Yeah,
together, and I appreciate that we can bounce things off one another.
I know. I wouldn't know what to do. I think being a PC is a hard job and you want so badly to do the right thing for people. And I think having another one in the office to bounce it off of and make sure we're like checking ourselves and doing things as best as possible for the family as a whole is so helpful. So,
I definitely agree. I'd also just say one of the requirements for parenting coordinators is that they talk to other parenting coordinators
right,
to know what is the standard in the area and what are the things that you learn because I mean, we've always had children, but we learn new things about
right.
how court impacts children, how children react, how parents and their actions impact children. And so speaking to someone else who can tell me this is what I've learned, this is what I've seen can be so invaluable.
Yes, and that brings me to you essentially have taken over. I don't know if you organized it, but you took over and have maintained the organization of the PCs in Mecklenburg County. And you host this wonderful Zoom or Ring Central now kind of get together once a month for all the PCs. And that's where we're able to do exactly what you just said, just bounce ideas off of each other and get support from one another and ensure we're on the right path on our cases. And we also have a listserv, an email group that we do the same thing. And so you've been instrumental in that. And I think it is so beneficial, not only as a PC, but also for the families that we're working for to know that it's not just one person's brain that's, going into this. It can be kind of a crowdsourced thing too.
Yeah, and I like a collaborative I like to work with other people who know things, which I think is a collaborative approach. And so I didn't create the idea of communicating with everybody, but when there was a need, I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and help fill that need so that way it can be met.
Yeah.
And we can all communicate clearly. And of course, everybody's busy, so coming to a monthly meeting is almost impossible, but sending an email to a listserv is super simple. And then we can all have a record of how does this work? What have we done? Here's an example of a motion that's been filed or an example of a report that I do. And I think that's helped us all. I think of iron sharpens iron.
Yeah,
And so it's helped us all, I think, be better.
I agree.
I really enjoy being a parenting coordinator because I find myself in a high conflict world. And so I just live there. And I realize that my motivation might not be the same as yours. What led you to this? Why did you want to do parenting coordinator work?
I like the idea of the helping people resolve their conflict and not advocating on one side of it all the time. I'm a litigator. Most of my cases, almost all of my cases, except for PC cases, are me advocating for one person and one position or, group of positions on that one person's side. In advocating for one person, it's often difficult to see the flip and come to the middle. And I'd like to think that in my litigation practice, I get there and am able to get my client towards a middle ground where we see the other person's perspective. But that's not the goal oftentimes, or that's not the place from which we act. And as a PC, it is the place from which you act. And so it's kind of nice to come from this side of the table or that side of the table to this middle ground and help people resolve their issues or train them to do better and work together better. And then in turn, it's helping their children. And yeah, I'm a mom. I love my children. I love being a mom. I've always loved kids. And so all of that trickles down to bettering the life of a child. So I think that's in the end my motivation in doing this work because it is hard work. The litigation is way easier. Don't you think?
I think being a parenting coordinator is the hardest task that I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy because it may not seem that way. I don't have court. But all the things I don't have are also really lonely. When you have
Yeah.
a client and you're advocating for their position, you're on the same team.
Right.
Nobody's on my team when I'm a parenting coordinator.
Yeah. Sometimes they really hate you.
Um, yes. Yes. I mean, they do. And that can be really hard because I like wake up and I'm like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do in this case? And I'm thinking we're all on team child.
Right.
And that's the
Yes.
hard part is it's sometimes hard to have the parents realize that we're all on team
Yes.
child.
Yeah.
Um, and so I appreciate that that's your lead in. How do you think and I know that you've only been a parenting coordinator since you had children, but how do you think
Yeah, that's
like
true.
being a parent influences the way that you are a parenting coordinator?
That's a great question, Danielle.
Thank you.
I think it makes me like fiercer, more fierce. I don't know what the correct grammatical term there is, but I really dislike when people act in a way that is harmful towards their children. And I do not allow that as a PC. And I am very firm in that. And I think that just like hits me to my core because I can't imagine acting in a way that would harm my own children. And I don't know that I would, like prior to having kids. I mean, I loved children. I, babysat my whole life and all of that. But like, I didn't have quite that like mama bear fierce, like, don't screw with this feeling that I have had for the last 7.5 years.
Do you think that some parents just need to be called on it? Like, like, hey,
Yeah.
you've lost the purpose here because now
Right.
you're so focused on like I think that's one of the things I enjoy is most PC parties want what's best for their child. Sometimes we don't all agree on what's best, but they want that, but they get so lost in the conflict that the purpose is gone. And
Right.
so sometimes I think as a PC, which I can't do as a litigator, is just like shake somebody
Yes.
on both sides and say, stop
Slap them
it.
around.
Yeah, say, knock it
100%.
off. Think about your kid.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the really unique things about a parenting coordinator that judges don't get to do as much because they're just on high on the bench and you're in
Right.
and out. But a parenting coordinator gets to
It's
kind of,
like in the dirt,
yeah.
in the nitty gritty of that.
Hmm.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. Generally I like to slap people around and make them do what I want them to do.
Um, Nobody likes to be told no.
Maybe we edit that out.
That was a discussion I told somebody today. I was talking in a PC case, and they were saying their child doesn't like to be told no, and I was like, I don't either. I don't know who likes to be told no. That's an interesting
Oh, Lord.
take, but that's also one of the reasons that being a parenting coordinator is hard, is because
Yeah.
we're telling parties no, and that's an adult.
Yeah. It's even harder.
And I think one of the other things that's important to note is, and I think that is really hard as a parent, is I have 3 very different children, and I've had to learn as a mom of 3 very different children that being a parent to each of those children is a little bit different. And that's, I think, influenced me in how I am a parenting coordinator because there is no right way for all
Hmm.
children. And I could have read that. I could have read studies on it. I could have researched it, but it makes sense now that I'm living it. And so I think one of the things that's important to remember as a parenting coordinator that I remind myself of is this is not my child. These are not my children. And I need the parents to participate so I can do what's best and help them figure out what's best for their
That
child,
child. Yeah.
not for my child.
Right.
So
Yeah. I agree with that.
something to keep in mind.